What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another afternoon in the Brew-Lab with me, Lone Fox, your Brewmaster-in-Chief. And today in the Brew-Lab, I'm coming at you with some spoilers from the never-ending spoiler season, courtesy of Wizards of the Coast. And the spoilers we're looking at today are, of course, the new Alchemy cards. There are going to be, I believe they said something like 63 in total by the time that they are released onto Arena on the 9th of this month. So in 3 days. So get ready. This is going to be crazy. It was very exciting news, of course, this whole new Alchemy thing. But if there's anything I could say about it, is that it was kind of dropped on us quite suddenly and with very little, warning. But that's okay. First up, we're looking at a new counterspell. These are all the digital-only Alchemy cards. These cards will only be playable in the Alchemy play queue as well as in Historic. So all of the formats that they are calling live formats, Historic and Alchemy, will be these cards will be legal. So first up, Absorb Energy, counter target spell. Cards in your hand share a card type with the spell gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast perpetually. So this is one of the new words that we're going to be seeing a lot of in the digital cards, this perpetually, which is, of course, all of these digital only cards, they're trying to do mechanics and things that are either impossible or very, very hard to do in paper. So this card is busted. I haven't seen a 3-mana rare counterspell in a long time, and because it just does that at face value, counter target spell for 3 mana. That's like a cancel, that's like an unforetold sword coming. The list of those 3 mana counter spells go back and back into the beginning of the game, but this one is clearly much better. If you counter an instant for the rest of the game, so cards in your hand. Okay, so that means so this is the question that I have, and I've asked myself this question a few times about some of the cards that we'll see today that are digital only, where it says perpetually. Like in this case, it says card in your hand that share card type with that spell. So is it the cards that are in your hand at the moment at which you countered the spell with Absorb Energy, or is it cards in your hand for the rest of the game? So even the stuff that you top deck or draw also gain the spell cost 1 less to cast. I'm not entirely sure, but regardless, that's ridiculous. In a control deck, that's exactly what you want. You counter the right type of thing, like an instant or sorcery that your deck is full of for the rest of the game. Those things cost 1 less to cast, and of course you can do this multiple times. So, and there's plenty of other cost reductions available in standard already. So could be, I think this is just definitely going to be a 4 of in every single deck that plays blue that wants to do counter magic-y, control-y, magic-y things. So get ready. Next up, Toral's Disciple. This one's crazy. 3 mana, 3/3 with haste. Human warrior. So relevant creature types. Well costed, hasty guy. But what happens is ridiculous. Whenever it attacks, you conjure 4 cards named Lightning Bolt into your library, then shuffle. So again, another one of these digital-only mechanics that would only work with digital. They just conjure 4 cards, actual cards that you can play and that will end up in your graveyard and everything into your library, called Lightning Bolt. So for those of you who don't know, Lightning Bolt is 1 mana, deals 3 damage to any target. Crazy. Like, I can see this going in so many decks. Warrior, tribal, burn decks, you name it. Like, this is going to be great. I cannot wait to play with it. I just can't believe that this is happening still. I'm still kind of just shocked when I'm reading these cards. Like, just conjuring 4 lightning bolts out of nowhere and putting them into your library randomly, and then shuffle. Interesting. Next up, we've got Forsaken Crossroads. Forsaken Crossroads enters the battlefield tapped. As Forsaken Crossroads entered the battlefield, choose a color. when for second crossroad in the battlefield, scry 1. If you weren't the starting player, you may untap for second crossroad instead. So it's a land that cares about whether you went first or not. They're trying to, as they mentioned in the initial video from Wizards of the Coast when they showed some of these cards off, they noticed this growing sort of disparity between whether you get to go first or draw first. And how is it that they can rebalance that ever so slightly? And this is one of the things that they did. So a land that cares about whether you went first or not, and that gets better if you went second. So if you weren't the starting player, you may untap for second crossroads instead. Pretty cool. Next up, we've got Ishkana, the Brood Mother. So apparently this is a character from previous Innistrad. I did not get to play that, so I'm not entirely sure. But it's here because it's showcasing one of the new things from these digital-only cards, and that is a thing they're calling Draft. A card from Ishkana's Brood Mother's spellbook. So what happens is I believe that this is what happens. There's, I think, 15, and I was hoping that they would show them to us here. I don't know which website to go to see that information, but creatures that have a spell book, it's 15 cards, like a little sideboard that these cards have that are just somewhere outside of the game, kind of like your lesson board, let's say. Whenever you're drafting from one of these cards spell books, it will conjure up, or not conjure up, but just like present you with 3 options that are random from those 15 cards in Ishkana's spellbook, and you can pick one of those cards and put it into your hand. Pretty cool. It's another Spider Lord. I can see this going in a deck with Lolth and Blex, the Vexing Pest, and I'm definitely going to be trying that on day 1 of Alchemy. I'm really, really excited to actually give that a try. And all of the creatures in the Broodmother's spellbook are other spiders or spider-related things. So it's kind of cool. It's so completely different that I'm like struggling to wrap my head around how much this is going to change the game. And but anyway, it's exciting regardless. So I'm definitely going to be trying to sneak a couple of copies into a Spider Tribal deck on day 1 of Alchemy. So tune in for that. Next up, we've got Slayer's Bounty. It's another one of these things that has a spell book. So whenever a Slayer's Bounty enters the battlefield, look at the creature card in your target opponent's hand. Whenever it enters the battlefield, look at the creature cards in an opponent's hand. Okay. Whenever you sacrifice Slayer's Bounty or another clue, draft a card from Slayer's Bounty's spellbook. You pay 2, sacrifice Slayer's Bounty, draw a card. So it's the same as a clue in that you can pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card. And it kind of gives all your other clues that ability as long as it stays on the board. And by that ability, I mean accessing the Slayer's Bounty spellbook. And from what I can remember, all of the cards in this particular card's spellbook are removal spells of some form. So pretty interesting. Don't think we're going to be able to do anything like clue tribal in standard. There's only really like 3 or 4 things that make clues from the last set. So, but still pretty interesting. Way to like get removal spells in a deck that doesn't necessarily have them in the main. You just have them in this spell book that's somewhere out in the ether. Interesting. We'll have to see how it plays out. Next up, Divine Purge. This one's really, really going to be super duper annoying. Like, as if mono white wasn't good enough already. Exile all artifacts and creatures with mana value 3 or less. So this takes rid of, like, for example, artifacts, and first thing that comes to mind is all the various tokens. Treasures, blood tokens, you name it. That's all gone with this. As well as all the 1 and 2 drops and 3 drops that you could possibly have played up until the point at which your opponent Divine Purges the board. It's like a 3-mana sweeper, essentially. It doesn't get rid of the things forever. they get exiled. And those things perpetually gain. This spell costs 2 more to cast. So they can recast them, but it puts a 2 tax on everything that was exiled by the Divine Purge. Of course, the treasure tokens never come back because once they're exiled, tokens don't come back. But, well, they cannot be recast. Wow. So, like, Talia, Paladin class, Redain. Now there's also another taxi thing that we're going to get to in a second up here. There's another thing that taxes here. This guy, the Captain Eberhardt. Mono white taxes is going to be well and truly back in standard, like 100%. Like, if it wasn't bad enough already as it is with, just Thalia and, Elite Spellbinder and Redain. Now, if you throw in Divine Purge and this guy that we'll get to in a second, it's going to be impossible to play anything against mono white. And that is going to be interesting to, play around and figuring out a strategy to beat them, because I still think it's going to be one of the best decks in the format. Like, it's crazy. Like, the best card, like, how many of the cards from these are white? Like, I mean, I know there's going to be lots more spoiled, but so far white has gotten the best cards for sure out of Alchemy. And this is one of the next ones, Angel of Unity. I like it how they're doing this thing. Like, certain, like, clues didn't really see much play. In this case, like, things that were a problem or just could have done with a little bit of a boost, like lands for people that are on the draw that are better. In this case, Angel of Unity is trying to give the party mechanic a little boost. So it's a 1/3 Angel Cleric with flying that costs 2 mana and lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, or you cast a party spell, choose a party creature card in your hand, it perpetually gets +1/+1. Pretty cool. I don't know how good that is. It's the first uncommon that we've gone through, so I mean, it's definitely not as strong as some of the other cards we've just looked at, but that's pretty cool for a party deck, I guess. Like a relevant creature type. Has lifelink, evasion, and makes the rest of the party cards in your hand a little bigger. Might be worth checking party out again after this, and that's kind of the whole point of this new play style, this new format. Next up, Ominous Traveler. When Ominous Traveler enters the battlefield, draft a card from Ominous Traveler's spellbook. So this drafting things from spellbooks is so far the new mechanic that is been more prevalent. You may spend mana. Okay, so that card perpetually gains. So the card that you get from its spellbook gains. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast the spell. And when you cast the spell, you return a card named Ominous Traveler you control to its owner's hand. Weird. From what I can remember, the cards in this guy's spellbook are like 2 of each from all of the tribes from Innistrad. So there's like 2 zombies, 2 spirits, 2 werewolves, 2 vampires. We need to get to 15. So maybe it was 3 of each. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah. So there's 3 of each of the various tribe members. There was a Tovalar in there and, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I honestly really have no idea where this goes, if anywhere. It's a really, really weird card. You get to sort of Maybe with changelings. I really don't know. This is a really weird card. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about all of this stuff in the comments, of course. What do you think of perpetuity? What do you think of drafting things from cards, spell books, that sort of thing? Also conjuring. How do you feel about conjuring? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Next up, we have a card that actually, out of all of these, is the ones that I find to be the less weird, even though it does have perpetually written on it, and I cannot wait to try some, like, Selesnya aggro deck which runs this. And there's a few that I can already think of, decks that is what I mean by that this card would fit right into straight away on day one. Selesnya Humans is already quite a powerhouse, and if you do have maybe 1 or 2 copies of Beginner New, if you run up into a situation where your board is locked, or your opponent's creatures are bigger than yours or whatever, you can just destroy everything, and then for the rest of the game, all the cards that come out of your hands get +1/+1. It's not a +1/+1 counter though, which kind of sucks. I was hoping it would be a counter. It seems like it's just +1/+1. But that's pretty cool. Next up, we have Gitrog, the horror of Java. Java? Frog horror. Very relevant. Very relevant. Billy, if you're watching this, I know you are. Our frog tribal deck, well, your frog tribal deck, might actually, with Grolnok, have found another great piece here. A 6/6 menacing frog horror for 4 mana, 2 colorless and Golgari colors, 1 black and a green. At the beginning of each combat, if Gitrog Horror Observer is untapped, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If they do, tap Gitrog. Okay, cool. So it's one of those, they used to have these back in the day. You need to like constantly do something to keep it tapped. And you really don't want it to untap because it's a 6/6 menacer. And in this case, the opponent has to continuously sacrifice creatures they have. Otherwise, Gitrog doesn't untap. And so if they do sacrifice a creature to keep it tapped, then you seek a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, it perpetually gains pay to sacrifice this land, draw a card. Wow, what a card. What a weird and cool card. Like, can't wait to try this out. First of all, I'm not entirely sure what Seek means. I know that in Historic Horizons or something, there was already some digital-only cards printed in there, and the Seek mechanic already exists in Historic. I believe it's kind of different through like Search Your Library for. This just like pulls one out of the library randomly, which is pretty cool. And then you don't shuffle. So it just pulls a land out of your library and puts it on the battlefield tapped. And whenever that happens, it gains... Okay, but it comes into play tapped. But you can sacrifice your lands for drawing a card at that point. Pretty expensive. Interesting. So basically, it just stays on the board. Your opponent has to sacrifice all their stuff to keep it tapped down. Every time that they do that, you get a land. And then eventually they run out of stuff to sacrifice, and you get to attack with a 6/6 menacing horror frog thing. That's pretty cool. Interesting to see if it finds a spot in mine and Billy's frog tribal deck. Captain Eberhard. Human tax deck. I was mono white tax deck. I was just talking about earlier. This guy's going to be a nightmare. 2-drop. Legendary, thank God. Human Soldier with double strike. Spells cast from among cards you drew this turn cost 1 less to cast. So the next, whatever you draw, while this guy's in play, is going to cost you 1 less to cast. And then spell cast from among cards your opponent drew this turn cost 1 more to cast. This with Talia, oh my god, it's gonna get crazy. Like, I actually can't wait to play it. I do really like Mono White, and I do play it well. So day 1, tune in for that. I'm gonna be cracking a bunch of alchemy packs. I've saved up a lot of golden gems, and they're gonna be giving us a bunch of free ones as well on day 1. So if you want to see how alchemy plays out, and you're still not certain whether you want to splurge on some more boosters of this format, or you just want to stick to standard, come tune in on day 1 of Alchemy and watch me play these cards. It should be pretty fun. Actually, I'm convinced it's going to be very fun. Like, some of these mechanics are crazy. I'm just like, it's that I feel weird. Like, it's so different that it's like. Makes me feel uncomfortable because I'm such an old fart when it comes to Magic, but I think it's going to be really fun and good for the game on the whole. Next up, Patient Zero. This is another crazy one, okay? Fits Zombie Tribal, obviously. 2-drop. 2/2 for 2 with lifelink is great, and it damage isn't removed from creatures your opponents control during cleanup steps. So damage is persistent. I mean, as long as Patient Zero stays on the board, of course, but you can, like, chip away at an opponent's big creature and then eventually kill it. It's not like at the end of turn its toughness goes back to its full toughness. I hope that makes sense. Damage isn't removed from creatures during opponent's control. Your opponent control during cleanup steps. Pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I mean, obviously, the moment you kill it, that stops happening. They go back up to their full toughness. So pretty easy to get rid of a 2/2. But interesting effect to have in standard, or in alchemy. So I'm really excited to test that out. Next up, Guardian Evangel, human cleric 3/1 for 2 mana. Wow, so many rares. When Guardian Evangel. So they did say that most of the digital only cards would be rares. Because there's less of them and they're really meant to like come in and shake up standard, because they always come in a month after standard set release. We'll play standard for the first month, standard gets solved, boom, alchemy drops, and it's like a bunch of like high power, or this time around it's going to be 60 something, but in future they said it's going to be around 30, so it's not going to be like huge. But because these abilities and texts or static text are so powerful, it is going to shake up standards so much once we switch into alchemy in the second part of the wait between a set release and the other. But when it enters the battlefield, you conjure a card named Guardian Evangel into your hand. Discard that card at the beginning of your next end step. When Guardian Evangel enters the battlefield, tap target permanent you don't control. Wow, that's cool. So you line up like all your attackers. You hold one Guardian Evangel in hand. It's turn 6. You untap. Your opponent's got all his defenders. He's ready to block your creatures. He's confident the game is going to continue. You play Guardian Evangel for 2 mana. You tap one of those creatures. Another Guardian Evangel appears in your hand. You still got 4 mana. You play another Guardian Evangel. You tap another one of the opponent's creatures. Another Guardian Evangel is conjured into your hand. You play the third one. You've tapped all your 6 mana. You've got 3 Guardian Evangels on the board. The opponent's entire board of creatures is now tapped down, and you can swing in for the kill. This is going to be really, really cool. Cannot wait to play with it. Nothing much more I need to say about that card, other than what I just, the situation I just described. That's what it's designed to do, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to play against, and really fun to play with. And 3/1 isn't bad, Who cares if it dies? You're swinging in with a 3/1 in white. That's good. I think this card is going to see a lot of play. This one, on the other hand, I'm not entirely sure about. There might be a deck that cares about flyers or something, but 4 mana for instant speed called Suntail Squadron. I don't know what's wrong with me today, guys. I'm getting all tongue-tied. Conjure a card named Suntail Hawk into your hand. So that just happens once. If this is the first card you cast, of course that's impossible. Because it costs 4 mana, but you would receive only 1 Suntail Hawk in your hand. Suntail Hawk is a 1/1 flyer, I believe. Just a 1/1 flyer called Suntail Hawk. But if you have fewer than 7 cards in your hand, you repeat this process. So if this is the last card you have left in your hand and you cast it, then you will get 7 Suntail Hawks in your hand. 7 1/1s. So you're basically replenishing your entire hand. It's just with 1/1s, sure, but in a deck like mono white that doesn't have very much card draw, and then you just start deploying 1/1. The next turn you could like cast 4 of them already, or 5, put 5 power onto the battlefield in the air. That might be relevant in some deck like that. I can already kind of start. My creative juices are flowing with this one. There's this new card that makes you draw cards for each flyer you have. Maybe like a Bant Flyers. I got some ideas with this card, but I don't know if it's really that good. Let's see. Next up, Ethereal Escort. Another mythic. 3 mana, 3/3 spirit with lifelink. When Ethereal Escort enters the battlefield or attacks, you choose a card in your hand. It perpetually gains lifelink. This format is gonna be insane. Like, I cannot wait to try it. Like, I have a feeling like it's just gonna be just ridiculous. Like, it's gonna feel, I honestly don't know, like maybe as overpowered as Historic feels in some ways. Like, just turn 3 wins, crazy stuff going on. This perpetually is gonna be really, really weird. So of course you can't do this in paper. Like, you could cheat. It would open up too many possibilities for cheating, let's say at tournament level. Like, you choose the card that gains lifelink and you just say, yeah, I've chosen it. And you don't have to reveal it to your opponent. So then you can just like play whichever card you want and you say, oh yeah, that's the one I picked lifelink on. There's no real way of like making sure or tracking that. You know, you'd have to like stick a little thing onto the card or something. It would just get too much. So that's why it doesn't happen in paper. But here we go, digital only format. We have this option. So this is going to be really good, I think, as well. It's just, it's fighting for a lot of, you know, there's a lot of things in the 3-drop slot in most decks these days. So I don't know if it'll supplant something else, but the ability to give something lifelink perpetually, and it's a card in your hand. So it doesn't have to be a creature in your hand. So you could give, you know, your Skyclave Maul lifelink. You could give your Burn Down the House lifelink. You know, there's some pretty crazy shenanigans that can be done there. I think this is more of like a weird combo piece than just like a spirit that gives one of your other spirits in your hand lifelink for the next turn or something. That's cool, but I think like the fact that you can give any card lifelink, ooh, some jank potential there. Some combo decks that I can think of already. So we'll see where that takes us. Next up, Inquisitor Captain, 4 mana for a 3/3 with Vigilance, 3 colorless and a white. When it enters the battlefield, if there are 20 or more creature cards with mana value 3 or less among cards in your graveyard. Okay. Hand and library. Okay. Ooh. If there are 20 or more creature cards or more, okay, with mana value 3 or less among, okay, that's really easy to do. In mono white, that's already just the way it is anyway. Some people run like 1 of Legion Angel, but otherwise it's just 3 drops. So okay, put one of them onto the battlefield and shuffle the other into your library. So whenever it enters the battlefield, you basically can seek. Okay, so seek. You just seek. Wow, that's crazy good. That is ridiculous. That's like the historic card that I didn't really know existed until I watched the tournament yesterday. Collected Company. That sounds pretty much like the similar thing, but on a body. It's like Collected Company on a body. Just like, and it's Seek. So you just grab 2 random creatures that cost 3 or less from your graveyard, from your library, and put one of them onto the battlefield and one into okay, and then you shuffle the other one into your library. Okay, so it seeks 2, and you pick the best one. You put that one onto the battlefield, the other one. Okay. Sorry, guys. It's like the first time for me as well that I'm reading through some of these, and that's the way I like to do my spoilers, so we kind of get a discussion going. This is crazy. In the decks that want to run this is going to be crazy. You just like play a, you know, your 4-drop brings another 3-drop to the battlefield. I think that's going to be really, really good in the Collected Company deck already. But yeah, I can think of a few other places I could put this card. Again, tune in on day 1 to see me figure these things out, because it's going to be crazy. Oglor, the Devoted Assistant. No MDFCs so far, which is cool. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Then put one of them into your graveyard. Whenever a creature card is put into your graveyard from your library or hand, it perpetually gains. When this card leaves your graveyard, you create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. And that's mythic. So every upkeep, you look at the top 2 cards of your library, and you put one of them into your graveyard if you want. No, you not may. Then put one of them into your graveyard. So you have to pick one of them, you put it into your graveyard. If it's a creature that is put into your graveyard, it perpetually gains. Whenever this creature... Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I'm not sure yet where this would go, but it's a cool effect. I like it. Sort of Reanimator, zombie deck or something. Could be interesting. We'll definitely have to try it out. Next up, Clone Crafter. A wizard that is a 1/2 for 2 mana. When it ETBs, you conjure a duplicate of a random creature card from your opponent's library into your hand. What? You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast this spell. What a trip, man. That's going to be wacky. I can see this going in the deck with the new Geist guy that copies things. Mimic, Glass Hall, something Hall Mimic. Clone Crafter. Misaliki. Oh, have we reached the end? At least for now. I'll continue to do these videos. I'm going to wait for a few days for a few more cards to pile up. I won't do them every day. And then, you know, I'll keep them coming until the full Alchemy set has been released. So, next up, discover the formula. A 6 mana instant. 4 colorless, 2 blue. Seek 3 non-land cards, then non-land cards in your hand perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. Wow. Seek is going to be a whack one. So it's just random. That's what I don't like too much about it. I mean, whatever. So randomly, it's just going to grab, and we're going to be complaining about the seeking algorithm very soon. Trust me. It's like, how does it determine the randomization of that seeking? But cool. Non-land cards from your library into your hand. And for the rest of the game, those cards gain, this costs 1 less to cast. That's really cool. Really good way to restock. 6 mana, 3 new cards, and they're cheaper to cast. I think that's really, really good. Next up, Geist of Regret. Lots of Geists lately in this strat. I mean, I get it. It's a spirit, but like, wow, there's a lot of Geists. 5 mana, 4/5 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you put a random instant card from your library into your graveyard. Then, put a random sorcery card from your library into your graveyard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard, copy that spell. Okay, so flashback is the first thing that comes to mind, obviously. Whenever you cast a card with flashback, you get to copy it, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Cool. Again, one of these where I'm not entirely sure yet, but the effect is really funky and cool. I can't wait to try and build around it. The main thing, after all of this blabbing that I've been doing through these cards, that I'm happy about with Alchemy is, you know what, I get to brew to my heart's content. An endless new amount of brews that I was already kind of running low on in Standard. And that just is the best thing about Alchemy for me. Lots of new brewing possibilities. Obsessive Collector, sorry. 4/3 for 4 mana, 3 colors and a blue. It's a flyer with ward 2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, seek a card with mana value equal to the number of cards in your hand. Wow, it's so busted. It's not busted, but it's just, wow, it's just so strong, so good. Of course, if you have no cards in your hand, that's rubbish. But even if you just have 1 card in your hand, you can like seek an opt, seek a fading hope. There's so many things that you could do with this already. I can think of a couple. Woo. Next up, and last but not least for today's spoilers, we have Kindred Denial. 4 mana instant, 2 colorless, and 2 blue. Counter target spell. Seek a card with the same mana value as that spell. Zoop. Again, insanely good. So it seems like so far it's just been like a lot of white and blue. I kind of never figured out exactly how it is that they do these things. Like, why is it that it went that way? But then on the first couple of days, you got a blue, a red, and a green, and a black. And then suddenly it's all just white and blue. But whatever. Like I said, the spoilers are going to keep coming. And I will keep bringing them to you. And then on the first day of Alchemy live on the client, I shall be playing with them and cracking a bunch of packs. So don't forget to subscribe so you get to see that happening. That's going to be it from me for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. And until then, this is Lone Fox from the Brew-Lab signing out. Peace, y'all.